It's time to talk Evangelion 1.0, You Are Not Alone, the first installment of the 4-part Rebuild of Evangelion film series, which is a retelling or reimagining of the television series Neon Genesis Evangelion. I wasn't going to say much about these films until the Western release of Thrice Upon a Time, but since they were released as individual films, that's how I'll treat them. Whenever the last film is available, I'll swing back around to look at the overall Rebuild series. Before we start, expectations have to be checked at the door. Along with acknowledging it's only 1/4 of a story, one has to consider what exactly this film was meant to accomplish. In order to do that, let's take a look at what was said about You Are Not Alone way back in the mid-2000s. According to Evangelion producer Toshimichi Otsuki, Rebuild of Evangelion is not a remake. Yes, story-wise, the first film sticks pretty close to the first 6 episodes of the TV series. However, according to Otsuki, that was done to familiarize viewers with the basics of Evangelion, but he also stressed that the sequels were going to take Eva in a new direction and be its own thing. He said, "I want everyone, from hardcore fans of the original work to people who only know it because of the licensed stuff, to look at it as a standalone film series. The complexity has been somewhat lessened to make it more accessible to newbies, but it'll still take a bit of thought to understand." Otsuki continued, "Feeling works with difficult words and concepts in order to create confusion among viewers was a good technique 12 years ago, but not anymore. And one of our primary goals for this project is to turn everyone's expectations upside down. So, as difficult as it might be, I will attempt to treat this film and its sequels as their own thing." Now, with that said, especially with the first film, it's not always easy to avoid making comparisons, and I will probably make quite a few before the end of this video. As mentioned earlier, 1.0 covers the first 6 episodes of the TV series. Many key moments are carried over wholesale. To name a few, the first 3 angel fights, Misato showing Shinji Tokyo 3, Shinji accidentally showing Misato his manhood, and the moonlight conversation between Shinji and Rei. But while it's the sequels that would take Evangelion in a radically different direction, You Are Not Alone makes its fair share of changes, some subtle and some not so subtle. Here are a few of those. Unlike the TV series, Rei takes Gendo's glasses into battle in 1.0. The ocean is red in Rebuild, different from the natural watercolor as seen at the start of the TV series, but reminiscent of what's seen in the final minutes of the end of Evangelion. Visuals later seen in the show are instead sprinkled throughout this film. Seele had a little more mystery to them when they were originally introduced. For example, while this conversation was always a little sinister, you could once make a reasonable argument these guys weren't villains. In 1.0, they are identified as Seele from the start, they name drop Lilith, and just in case there was any doubt they're the villains, they now have a logo with a serpent and apple. Lastly, at the end of the film, Karu pops up naked on the moon to say, but moving along. In order to fit 6 24-minute episodes of content within its 1 hour and 40-minute runtime, 1.0 truncates and sacrifices characterization and world building. The earliest sections of the narrative feels like it has been reduced to the absolute minimum required to function. Gone is the bulk of the soul-searching, character interactions, and school life. Pretty much all of episode 4. Moments like Shinji's time in the wilderness with Kinzu and Shinji's big change of heart about leaving Tokyo 3 are gone. What once took over 20 minutes is resolved in like 6 minutes, and is not as effective as it once was. Apparently episode 4 almost didn't make it into the original series, and it was ultimately included because it was felt more time was needed to establish the characters. I think this film proves that assessment right. Additionally, the transition between that and everything leading to Operation Yashima feels a little disjointed now. A pretty solid case of how You Are Not Alone's faithfulness is sometimes a detriment. In all fairness, translating something from television to film isn't easy. Television has a lot more time at its disposal, and Neon Genesis Evangelion used that time effectively. The moodiness and long contemplative edits were a huge part of what made the show compelling. The show allowed plenty of time to get familiar with its world and let its characters live. But a film as short as this one, covering as much ground as this one does, doesn't have that kind of time. So what could have been done differently? Perhaps this fight could have been skipped in favor of more character moments. Maybe after Toji punches him, Shinji doesn't get back into the robot again until Operation Yashima. That would make the film one long build to Shinji saying, It's not an idea I'm committed to, just a quick suggestion to restore a bit of depth. For example, a longer running time is another solution. The end goal is spending more time with the Three Stooges and devoting more attention to Shinji coming to terms with his new life. This stuff was originally an important part of Shinji's development, and You Are Not Alone seems to want it to be important as well. A new dramatic moment later in the film hinges on it, so I think finding a way to restore some nuance would be beneficial. More than likely this would have to be new material, and that's fine as long as it's faithful to the characters and serves the purposes of the story being told. On the other hand, the way the film does things, emphasizing plot over characters, really makes it move. The deliberate pacing of the TV series isn't for everyone, and I could easily understand someone preferring the tighter pacing of the film. I just feel a better job could have been done hiding the joints between what was once episodes and avoiding the compilation film vibe a little more than this film does at times. However, things improve in the second half of the film, and there's a couple of good reasons for that. You see, You Are Not Alone breaks down roughly something like this. Episodes 1, 2, and 3 get covered in about 45 minutes, episode 4 gets about 6 minutes, and episodes 5 and 6 get 48 minutes. The events of episodes 5 and 6 get more time than originally allotted, and thus are given time to breathe compared to how the content of the earlier episodes are handled. It also gets a significant overhaul. Kazuya Suramaki, one of the Rebuild directors, cited this portion of the story as something that got special attention. He said, "It's a fact that there were things we wanted to do in the original TV series that just weren't feasible at the time, and one of our goals in doing this is to find a way to put some of the ideas back in. Operation Yashima is a perfect example. It's something we really wanted to do right this time, and getting the chance to do that was one of my main reasons for accepting the role of director. And yeah, this overhaul makes some good additions and might be a genuine overall improvement." As the climax of a film, it's handled in a far more dramatic manner than it was previously. To cite two examples, Best Girl puts up more of a challenge, and Misato has to convince Gendo not to lose faith in Shinji after he momentarily wavers during the fight. Plus, the whole situation is a lot more intense for the poor boy. More time is spent convincing Shinji that not only do his contributions matter, but that other people are also giving their all to keep the world turning. Plus, in order to convey the seriousness of the situation, Misato takes Shinji to Central Dogma to share things that weren't revealed until much later in the TV series. Lastly, Shinji gets to listen to messages of encouragement from his friends. All of this to say, you are not alone. These moments were not a part of the original Operation Yashima, and while it might seem like a bit much, working through a little reservation is perfectly understandable when dealing with a depressed teenage boy who just suffered multiple near-death experiences, doing exactly what the adults around him want him to do yet again. And although these additions would have been more effective in the context of the original relationships, they still work, and I like them a lot. On another note, the leap from television to the silver screen brought a bigger budget, and it allowed Studio Khara to do far more than Studio Gainax could back in the mid-90s. Evangelion is more animated than it was before, and it looks phenomenal. The extensive use of CGI opens the door to new opportunities and usually blends well with the traditional animation. As can be seen, all of this is used in service of bigger, bolder, and bloodier action than what the TV series delivered. Also, the greater budget affords the film a livelier world, and I think it's a treat to see more of the world that Shinji and the other characters are fighting so hard to protect. There's the countless civilians living their everyday lives, the employees populating the halls and grounds of Nerve, and in the climax, said employees are working together to help save the day. Fitting for the theme of not being alone. But, long story short, it's a good looking film. There's no question where the money went. All in all, You Are Not Alone is a pretty good time. It retells the earliest sections of the TV series at a snappier pace and with a shinier coat of paint. Due to changes made to the characters and pacing, I wouldn't recommend it as a replacement of the show. As close as it sticks to the television series narratively, it's still a different enough experience to warrant watching both. A great example of how you can take the same text and bring it to life in different ways. Still, I am left wondering how well it stands on its own. Even accepting the changes made to make it more accessible, how effective is it without prior knowledge? As someone familiar with the source material, I can fill in the missing pieces. But for those who watched the rebuild first, how well did it work for you? What is your impression of Kinzu and Toji? And for fans of the original series, do you think Studio Khara did justice to Evangelion with the first installment of Rebuild? Share those thoughts in the comment section below. And if you would like for me to continue talking about Rebuild, let me know with likes, shares, comments, and subs. But until next time, take care.